And it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer, really, standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And Alejandro Rojas will be coming up in just a minute. We have a couple of guests this evening. One is Norio Hayakawa. After that, we have Simon Sharman is going to be joining us from the UK. It's going to be the middle of the night for him. And a couple of things. If you haven't listened in a while, Joyride is gone. We have a new support platform. Everything can be found right on our website. Under the menu bar says support the show. I want to thank all of those out there that are helping out and supporting. It's a lot of you haven't heard. A lot of people are emailing saying what's going on because you probably don't listen to every single show, and I totally understand that. But everything's right on our website. We have Susan is coming up from the New England UFO Conference after the news to give a brief hello and talk about that. I'm going to be there. That's in Leominster, Massachusetts this coming weekend, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up with some listeners there. As usual, we usually get to hang out with a few of us there. We have T-shirt graphics. There's at least 7 or 8 people are throwing their design in. We're going to have a vote, and that will be on November 4th. That'll be up on our website. We'll have all the different designs, and we'll let you, the listener, vote for the T-shirt graphics. And there'll be more details on that as soon as we get closer to that. And that's enough of my babble. We have Alejandro Rojas. How are you?
Good. Will I be able to vote on the design?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. I think it'd be cool if you had a Norio Hayakawa T-shirt.
Oh, yes, with that Japanese flag in the background.
Well, it'd be cool, you know, him playing his guitar with his cowboy hat. And
yeah, we'll have to talk to him about that.
He's a unique individual. I love Norio.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll have to get his permission, of course.
Of course.
I'm sure he'll be all over it.
He'll love it.
Yeah. So what's going on in the UFO news this week?
UFO news. Lots of exciting stuff. Not really. Actually, it's kind of boring when it comes to news this week. And it makes me want, you know, we talk about this. There's all those people out there who hype up and over-sensationalize everything. There's this one guy I know whose name I will not disclose who can make some weird rock being found in Russia sound like this amazing alien event and phenomena going on. But for those of us who like to be more straight up on the news and information, it gets a little harder when there's not as exciting stuff, and we don't want to, you know, boast these things as something they are not. But but there are a few sightings. You didn't want to say anything about that? Like, oh, yeah, those people bug me too?
Well, you know, you have to let things run their course, I guess.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I guess you're right. So Pennsylvania witness videotapes a boomerang UFO. Sounds like it could be exciting. The video is not that exciting. You can't really make much out. A lot of people are saying, oh, that's probably Venus. But it's difficult to make anything out. The witness did say they saw a black helicopter during the day, probably not related. But at night when they went out to have a smoke, they saw this light that they said just suddenly appeared. They took a picture that's in the story, and he says after it floated and hovered around for a minute from left to right, it ascended a little and then quickly vanished, flew off. So if it really flew off, of course, that would be something significant.
Right, yeah. How many witnesses were there total on this?
Only the one witness submitted it, but he said that it was him and his fiancée.
Not a mass sighting, but still interesting. Yeah.
And he has a photo, although you can't make much out in the photo. Another video where that includes, a UFO sighting that includes some photos that are also as difficult to make out. In fact, if you just look at the photos, you would think it's probably Venus. And I suppose it could be. They said they first spotted this thing around 5:30. That's when they really watched it and took some pictures. 5:30 a.m., that is. They believe that it first appeared in the sky around 3:30, and this is the key. They say they see it in the sky almost every morning between 3:30 and 4:30, and it fades as it gets brighter out. So, yeah, most likely a star, most likely Venus there, although they think that, at least in these pictures they took, that the object is below the cloud cover. However, although there are clouds, in none of these pictures do the clouds seem to cover the object. So that one's still outstanding. They said that they do feel that it may have moved, but probably Venus. And then here's the other one that I have for you. This is brilliant red-orange, and of course that always raises a red flag right there. UFOs reported moving over Scranton, Pennsylvania.
You're talking about Chinese lantern thoughts? Is that what you're...
Chinese lantern thoughts, because Chinese lanterns are usually red-orange orbs, and that's what this witness said they had seen at 9:15 p.m. on September 22nd. He said they were flying in different formations. However, the person said that the four objects, there were four of them, emerged together and shot off behind the clouds to the west. So, of course, if they moved at a fast speed and just didn't appear to move at a fast speed, then that would rule out Chinese lanterns. But, of course, often these orange red orbs turn out to be just that. So another one. There were no photos that were captured or video on this one, but another, just interesting report from the MUFON database.
Now, that Terry Ray and Erica Lukes, I think a few people are getting together and they're doing the orange orb research through MUFON, or they were going to. I'm not sure if that's still on or if that's still happening. But I read this story in particular, and if I remember right, it said that a fifth orb joins, it comes from a different location and joins up with the rest of them. That sounds pretty peculiar.
He said he just saw a fifth one appear, but only the four that were together earlier seemed to merge.
Ah, okay.
But of course, if they were launched together and as they got further away, it's not too hard to think that they may look weird. I think the issue is, and I think this is where some investigators go off the rails a bit, where they just don't get it. I think that we always have to think of how, with these stories or sightings, if we're going to purport that they are something significant, they have to do something unusual, some unusual characteristics. If you can't say those characteristics are not something a balloon or a lantern can do, then there's not really much we can do with that except for say it's interesting. And a lot of these researchers are trying to say, well, not all the orange orbs are Chinese lanterns. Maybe not, but if you don't have, you're not documenting them doing something really strange, then you can't prove otherwise. Yeah. And that's the high bar we have for this field. But as Mr. Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
That's right. And it's Occam's razor when it comes to this type of thing as well. You know that Carl Sagan wasn't the first person to say that. There was,
oh, he wasn't?
No, I had looked that up at one time. It was someone else prior to Sagan, and he kind of, he's known for saying it. But if you Google that, you can check that out, I'm pretty sure. I could be totally wrong.
What we should do, we should look it up and make sure and credit the original source to popularize, the guy who deserves the credit, assuming it was a man.
All right, so check out the show notes. If I get some time here, I'll check that out, and I'll pop that into the show notes.
Sounds good, brother.
And all these links will be there, which will go to Open Minds TV and our good friend over there, Alejandro Rojas.
Yep, and I can't say there is more interesting news coming. So there are some stories I know coming down the pipe that are going to be really interesting. So next week we should have some more fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah, there's talk about George Bush Sr.
No, that's not interesting. That's a hoax.
Is that a hoax? I've been trying to figure out if that's a hoax or not. So you have
the original source was World Weekly News, which it even says on the site it's an entertainment purposes only. If you look at the stories, it's like The Onion. They're just kind of making up some stories.
Well, I'm glad you looked into that. I tried to figure out something the day after I heard it. I couldn't find anything. So when I couldn't find a lot on it, that made me nervous that it could be some type of hoax. But very good. Well, thanks so much, and thanks for clearing that up, too. And we'll be talking to you next week.
All right. Talk to you soon, buddy.
All right. Hang in, everyone. We're going to have Susan talk about the New England UFO conference that I will be attending this weekend. All right. So now we're speaking with Susan McNeil Spooler about the Greater New England UFO Conference coming up this weekend. How are you, Susan?
I am well. Thank you for having me.
Sure. And on our website also is the banner where you can click on that on Podcast UFO. You'll see the banner in the sidebar, and you can click on that and get all the information. But, Susan, let's talk about the conference. This is a little different than last year in a couple of different ways.
Well, this is the third annual, and in the past 2 years, Steve Fermani from Leominster ran the conference. I volunteered for him. I ran the registration desk, and that gave me a lot of insight as to what's required to run such an event. So I'm implementing those changes to make it more efficient.
And one of them is the price. It's a very reasonable price this year.
It is. I'm personally funding this event myself, and I have done a great deal of advertising, real television commercials on the History Channel, National Geographic, Sci-Fi, throughout north central Massachusetts.
All right, let's talk about the speakers who's going to be there this year.
Sure. We have Mark D'Antonio, who is an expert. He works for MUFON, and he is an expert in video and audio. Photographs to determine whether or not they're authentic or whatever they are.
It's one of my favorite people.
He's fantastic. We have Ray Hernandez. He's coming up from Miami Beach, Florida, and he is the co-director and co-founder of FREE, which is the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. He's been collecting data from people around the world, over several thousand people, from the United States, China, North America, South America, and in various languages to make a comparative analysis of people's abduction experiences. If the aliens look the same, what happens to them, etc. So he'll be divulging for the first time the data that he has gleaned from these.
He was a guest on the show not too long ago, but at that time he was not divulging the data, so that's good to know.
Right. So that's a special thing that's going to be happening this Saturday. Then we will have Roxy Zwicker from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. She's a historian, and she does haunted historical tours, and also has had experiences with orbs and UFO sightings. So she'll be speaking for us, as well as Bill Hall. And he wrote a book called The Haunted House Diaries, and it has to do with a paranormal flap in Litchfield County, Connecticut. Very interesting book. And then after that, we're having Paul and Ben Eno. They're the world-famous father and son paranormal team. Their talk will be Alien versus Demon, which is which. Very interesting people.
Yes.
And let's see. Our keynote speaker, Richard Dolan, will speak at 3 p.m. Some scheduling guffaws. He'll be doing his presentation via Skype from London. We're all set technically to accommodate that. And after that, we are having Jan Harzan. Jan is the Executive Director of MUFON. MUFON stands for the Mutual UFO Network. And he'll be talking about the past 46 years of MUFON's history and moving forward what they plan to do. Now, Friday, going a little bit backwards here, we're having Billy Penning and Ronnie LeBlanc, who are from Leominster. They will talk about Bigfoot experiences, orange orbs, and they have a plaster cast of a foot, a Bigfoot foot that they took in Leominster State Forest. So Leominster is a real hotbed of UFO and very unusual activities. And Bill Brock will also be speaking. He's coming down from Maine as well to talk about Bigfoot.
Oh, we should commute.
Should.
Yeah.
$25 for adults and $10 for children under 12 on Saturday. Friday, $10 for adults and $5 for children under 12. We look forward to seeing you. Our website is www.newenglandufo.com.
Very good. Thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing you this weekend.
Thank you as well. Take care.
So hang in, everyone, for this quick music break. We'll be right back with Norio. Norio Hayakawa, how are you? I pronounced your name wrong, didn't I?
You sure did, but no problem. A lot of people do.
I'm sorry about that.
My last name is Hayakawa.
Hayakawa.
Which means, in Japanese, which means fast river.
Really?
Haya means fast, and kawa means river. So it has a meaning.
Well, I want to welcome you to the show. You're only on for about a half an hour or so. I have read a lot of your postings over the last few years, and I think you have a pretty good view on what's going on. It's always interesting to read what you write, and you sort of have a good, healthy skepticism as well.
That's correct.
And so, can you talk about you have an interesting background too. Can you tell the listening audience who's not aware of your background? And you live in New Mexico, right?
That's correct. I live in the city of Rio Rancho, which is right next to Albuquerque, and I'm really glad to be living here in this land of enchantment. I used to live in California, but in 2008, we moved here to this amazing state of New Mexico.
Well, I've spent a little time there myself, actually, in visiting with my sister, 4 months in Los Alamos, and I love the whole area. Santa Fe, it's just a gorgeous canyons, wonderful hiking if you're into that, and really nice Native American culture. I really like that.
Exactly, and actually, New Mexico is the reason why I have been involved in the UFOs for the past 55 years, or I don't know, maybe close to 60 years, because I started active UFO research in 1961 while I was living in Japan, but it was in 1964 that I became acquainted with the Lonnie Zamora Socorro incident in New Mexico in 1964, and that's really what brought me to New Mexico.
Really?
That's
wow.
Correct.
That is, to me, I think that's one of the top cases. He was Lonnie was by everyone. Ray Stanford, I've talked to a number of times, and a lot of people that all say the same thing. He was a stand-up guy. He didn't want any publicity, especially this type of publicity. And, he was telling the truth.
That's correct. And the reason I like New Mexico is because it has, first of all, it's so spacious. I mean, it's the 5th largest state in the Union with just a population of just 2 million in the entire state. And this is why I have always stated that it's a perfect location for the government to conduct any kind of black project programs or research using this amazingly vast area. And I have to tell you that I have a website, my own website now. It's called noriohayakawa.wordpress.com, in which I post lots of fascinating items, and many of the items refer to New Mexico, and especially if you scroll down my website, you can see things such as the amazing Farmington, New Mexico sighting of 1950, in which the incident took place for 3 days in a row, every time around 11 to noon, and hundreds of objects were seen in formation by hundreds of citizens of Farmington, and you can see about that incident in my website. But anyway, I'm so excited today, especially right now, because this coming Saturday I have helped organize the second New Mexico UFO Conference. It's going to take place on October 17th, this Saturday. And the mayor of Rio Rancho, where I reside, officially declared October 17th as the official UFO Research Day. And it's the first time that I recall that an American city's mayor has declared in seriousness the significance of UFO research. And so we're very excited. And this conference is being sponsored by nonprofit New Mexico MUFON. And we are bringing in 3 speakers, Colonel John Alexander, Nick Pope, and Nick Redfern. They are the only 3 speakers, and it's going to be a tremendous conference based on serious research. And so, by the mayor of Rio Rancho declaring October 17th as the official UFO Research Day, it is a recognition that this is not about craziness of Roswell Festival and all that. There's nothing of that sort in this conference. The mayor has declared that UFO research is a serious research. And we're not talking about aliens and all kinds of costumes and all that stuff. We're straightforwardly talking about the seriousness of the UFO phenomena and reality. But yet, we have not come to any conclusion as to what this phenomenon really is. And so the title of that conference on Saturday here in Rio Rancho is, What Does the Government Really Know? And so, anyway, I'm so excited. I had to mention that.
Well, that is a stellar lineup you have there.
I believe so.
Yeah, and John was on this show, I think 2 weeks ago, and he will definitely have something to say about the government and UFOs for sure. He's not always popular with a lot of the listening audience. I had a number of emails of people I actually forwarded a few to him. He got a kick out of it, of people calling him a disinformation agent because of, he basically claims that it's nothing that, the government is really that interested in compared to wars and everything else that's going on at the same time. So anyway, again, not always popular, but I think he has a good message. I really enjoyed speaking with him. Very smart guy. And also Nick Pope is kind of hard to nail down. So, and Redford's, really, I'm a fan of Nick Redford, and he always has a lot. And that guy can put out some books, let me tell you.
Yes, he's a prolific author, and he has a whole range of topics in this so-called ufology. Probably he's the most prolific authors today regarding ufology and the various aspects of ufology and UFO culture. And by the way, I don't call myself a ufologist. I call myself an unorthodox ufologist that specializes in the culture of ufology, the culture. So I have not, in fact, there's no such a thing as a UFO expert. A lot of people use the term UFO expert, such as, a UFO expert is coming to a conference and going to speak. There's no such a thing as a UFO expert, because it's like saying that he or she is an expert on God.
Yeah.
That's my statement.
Well, I totally am in line with that. I was in Russia a few weeks ago visiting over there, and I just had this situation happen. Someone introduced me to this person at a spa and said a few things about me, and the guy was very excited and was babbling on, and I was introduced as an alien expert by someone over there. I thought that was, I said, no. I tried to get the translation changed a little bit for that, just saying that I do a show. And, a lot of people actually say to me, are you a ufologist? And I'm not, maybe an armchair one at best, but I am just fascinated by the topic. I had my own sighting. I became fascinated with the topic and fascinated with the people involved in this field. And, there is some, there's a little bit of infighting here and there. There's some of that goes on no matter what. But I think the people that are interested in this topic are fascinating.
You're absolutely right, because as far as I'm concerned, there's no topic more important in our life than the topic of the UFO phenomenon, because anybody that can solve the UFO phenomenon will solve the entire mysteries of the universe. And so from psychologically, sociologically, culturally, and scientifically, the UFO phenomenon question will answer a lot of questions, but so far it hasn't brought anything. But I think that this topic relates to everything. This topic relates to everything. So I say that the UFO phenomenon topic is one of the most important because it involves all types of beliefs, and beliefs are definitely part of the human psyche. Everybody has a belief, but sometimes belief can lead to reality. Sometimes it doesn't. So anyway, I continue to keep abreast with what is happening in the world as far as UFO reports and theories and everything is concerned. Like I said, I've been doing this since 1961, but I can definitely state that I am just as ignorant as anybody about this subject. I have not come to any conclusion because it's a remaining mystery. Mm-hmm. And so I continue to gather information. We have actually not come any step closer to the truth than we started.
I believe that 100%. And I've had a few people ask me, well, why do you do this? Are you looking to see this thing solved? Is that why you're in it? And I just say, well, it's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, and I'm okay with that. I really am. I am totally okay with that. And it's not because if it was solved, my show would go away, because that probably would happen. I've never really thought about that. But just the fact that it is such a mystery. And, anytime that someone is out there and telling you they know what's going on, that's when you want to run the other way. Because no one really knows.
That's true. And here is a very important thing. There are two concepts or two thoughts that everybody has. And that is that in this whole wide cosmos or universe, there has to be some type of intelligence or intelligent entities somewhere in this universe. Most mainline astronomers, scientists, and so on believe that, yes, the possibility is there, definitely. There has to be. But the second idea is that then the UFO phenomenon is relevant to that, or is the UFO phenomenon an evidence of such an extraterrestrial visitation, physical visitation here to our physical Earth? This is two completely different subjects. And most scientists and astronomers of the world are, while the majority believe that there has to be somewhere in this universe other intelligent life. But when it comes to UFOs, it's a totally different story. And I have to stress the difference, and it's very important. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the UFO phenomenon is not equivalent to evidence for extraterrestrial physical visitation. And this is also what Dr. Jacques Vallée has been saying. In fact, people like Dr. Jacques Vallée, people like John A. Keel, the late John A. Keel, a prolific author, just like Nick Redfern of today. But both these gentlemen are my heroes, Dr. Jacques Vallée and John A. Keel. And both have really changed my view of UFO phenomenon since around 1978 when I started reading their books. And so what I'm trying to say is that let's not equate the UFO phenomenon with physical extraterrestrial visitations. We still haven't come up with conclusive evidence for this. But let's keep researching about this phenomena. The phenomena definitely seems to be real or real. Although we don't really know what real is. In fact, that's another saying of mine. We still don't know what reality really is.
That's right. Even the science will prove that, actually. Especially when you get into like quantum mechanics and all that. I just want to make a quick announcement here. Anyone listening live, you can jump over to podcastufo.com and get in our chat room. You can also call in live if you'd like to. That's 603-967-4030. Or Skype, Marty Willis. That's MartyWillis. I don't know why I chose that. I don't like to be called Marty, but anyway. But next week, I just wanted to make this announcement. I'm going to say it at the end, too. We have, I think, a really killer show lined up. We have, first, we're going to start out with Mark Rudiger and Leslie Kane. They're going to be on first. And then after that, we have skeptic Michael Shermer. You all know him from his smirk that he does so famously when he's talking about the UFO phenomena. So anyway, it's going to be a really great show next week coming up. And again, if we want to jump in the chat room, we do have a question up there now for you, Norio, and that is, what have you learned about the UFO culture? And this person would like to know more about that because that's what interests you the most.
Yes, a very good question. And the UFO culture has a wide spectrum. Let's say, for example, one of the best example of UFO culture in America and also in the world is, let's take, for example, Area 51. Now, Area 51 has become synonymous with alien technology. And that's what I mean. Somehow or other, in 1989, when the world first started hearing about Area 51 due to the appearance of Mr. Bob Lazar in 1981 on Las Vegas Channel 13 News, the world has equated or ascribed Area 51 with alien technology. And that's what I call UFO cultures. It's a household word. Area 51 has become America's household word, and everybody associates Area 51 with aliens. And another interesting thing about the culture of UFOs is, of course, the gray alien and the Roswell. Roswell has become synonymous with alien spaceship crash. And this has deeply become part of UFO culture. In fact, the city of Roswell, New Mexico, has benefited from the people's association of Roswell with aliens. And this is what I mean. In this world, there's a UFO culture that actually is contributing to part of the UFO industry. What I call the UFO industry includes movies, videos, books,
podcasts,
everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the UFO industry is bad or good. It's just part of the culture. So we have to admit that there is a UFO culture here, and it just developed naturally. And until we really encounter the final truth, in other words, let's say the arrival of real extraterrestrial physical entities on Earth, the UFO culture will continue on and on.
Now, a lot of the cultures in the past have, faded away with time, like fairies, angels, things like that. And you hear speculation that the UFO, this is from skeptics, or, I don't know, maybe debunkers, skeptics, whatever you want to call them, that say it's just another trend like little people, the leprechauns, and all that. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I think it's here to stay until something's solved myself, but, maybe I'm just blind to that topic.
Yes, we're living in this modern century, and the people's concept of extraterrestrials have become, streamlined extraterrestrial flying saucer, type of shape, and it fits the modern civilization. But in the Middle Ages, the description of reported sightings were different, like fire or round halo-like objects. And when it comes to entities, fairies, elves, and so on, were reported and recorded throughout history. But like Dr. Jacques Vallée said, each culture, each age has its own description of something we still don't know. And so, it's a fascinating thing that this phenomenon has existed for ages, according to researchers like Dr. Jacques Vallée, and yet we are still completely mystified about this phenomenon.
Up on the message board, someone wants to know what your thoughts on Dulce is.
Yes, that's a very good topic. Since I live in New Mexico, I live only about 2.5 hours away from Dulce, and I visit Dulce once in a while and talk to the locals. Yes, there definitely seems to be something there, but we don't really know what that is because we haven't come up with any physical, tangible, solid evidence that there is a physical underground facility in or around Dulce, New Mexico, including the so-called Archuleta Mesa, as well as the Archuleta Mountain, which is located northwest on the mesa, right near Colorado border. But the rumors continue on, but my take is that there is a possibility that at one point in time...
Hold on just 1 second, if you would, yes. Please. Okay, caller, please say your first name. And sorry to interrupt you, Norio. Caller, you have a question?
Hi, yeah, I apologize for the interruption as well. This is Chris in Pennsylvania. I'm just wondering if you think the same UFO cultures are developing in South America or around sites where UFOs are seen often. And I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, a very good question. Yes, there's a UFO culture in South America. And to give you an example, there's a place called Uritorco in Argentina, near the city of, not too far away from the city of Cordoba, Argentina. And Uritorco is a town just like Sedona, Arizona, which has become a spot for people who are into the mysterious aspect of this UFO phenomenon, because a lot of people in that location, Uritorco, believe that there is some kind of a vortex in that location, just like Sedona. And that's why I'm saying that this is not unique. The UFO cultural spot, I would say, exists around the world. I just mentioned to you Sedona, for example, Arizona. It's a mecca for those who are really into the mystery, or some people even call the myth. But yes, I believe that this is part of UFO culture.
Norio, I know you wanted to be on for a short time, but I feel like we got a lot to talk about. And What I'd like to do, I've had a couple of weeks, I've had a couple of problems with getting guests. So what I'd like for you to do, if it's all right with you, is to hang on while I add the next guest to the conversation. And if he is not answering, then I'll have you to fall back on. How's that?
Well, unfortunately, yes. I have to leave right now, but definitely I would like to get on your program in the very near future, longer than today.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I'm going to try the next guest, and thanks so much, Norio. I really appreciate it. It was great talking to you, and yes, we will definitely have you back on.
Thank you so much, Martin.
All right, you take care.
Bye.
All right, hang in, everyone. We're trying our next guest here. Simon.
Hey, Martin, how you doing?
Can you believe that? We got you on. The last couple of weeks, I've had some trouble with connecting with guests, so this worked as smooth as can be. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Thanks very much, Martin. It's great to be here.
Well, I don't know how great it is. What time is it in the morning there?
It's exactly 6:47 a.m. So,
oh, yes.
Yeah.
And you told me today that you have to get up early. I feel for you. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Now, last time you were on the show, I don't know if I ever told you this, but your show got a lot of downloads. You have a lot of people are paying attention to you and what you do. Can you give the listener that did not hear your show the first time, which was a few years ago, basically your background and what got you interested in the topic, and then we'll talk about your movie?
Yeah, sure. I've got to think now, cast my mind back about 20 years. It was around 1989 or 1990. I actually heard Timothy Good on the radio, and it was a late-night show, and he was talking about a lot of the stuff that, a lot of us are aware of now, whether it was, certain people disclosing information, military witness accounts, etc. But this was before the days of the internet, and it was certainly before the days of the X-Files. And to hear somebody speak in such a manner about this subject in such detail, it had an effect on me. It did have a big impact, and it was at that point when I thought I really needed to take a look at the subject because it really took me by surprise. And I spent that summer trying to find every book I could find on the UFO topic, which, I've got to be honest with you, Martin, wasn't very many books back in those days. I think it was about 7 or 8 books in my local library. And that's where it all began.
Uh-huh. And I remember, I think I remember you saying that basically your area where you live in, there's a lot of cloud cover. Am I getting that right?
You're absolutely correct. Yes, it's generally grey clouds. The north of England is, and especially being on one particular side of the Pennines, means that the weather pattern where we are is gives it basically doesn't give any clear skies very often. Although recently it's been a lot better. But yeah, generally my memory of growing up is a lot of rain walking to school. So yeah.
Now, how far? Just because I don't know where this is, where's Warminster from you? How far away is that?
I couldn't say exactly how many miles, but it's probably around 200.
Oh, okay. So it's not really that far away, and that was as far as I know, it's still an ongoing hotspot, or has been.
Apparently so. I've got to be honest, Martin. It's not something I'm particularly familiar with, so it's not something I could really comment on with any authority. But so I believe. There does seem to be things going on down there, but I'm not familiar with the case or the cases.
Now, going back to Timothy Good, he was on the show briefly. I got to meet him, 2 years ago down in North Carolina. Real nice guy, smart. He's a concert violinist. But he comes under a lot of controversy these days, some of the books he's written, and very popular, another one who a lot of people follow and listen to everything he says. But He's gotten in a little bit of controversy, nothing that he's done deliberately, just some of the topics he's spoken on. And I don't know where I'm going with this exactly, but I really enjoyed meeting him. Seemed like a real nice guy. Have you actually sat and talked with him?
Yeah, I've met him a few times. In fact, the last time he was at a UFO conference in Yorkshire about 2 years ago, and we met the evening before. We had dinner and quite a lengthy conversation. So it's funny you should say that, though. I mean, first of all, can I just say I have huge amount of time for Tim. As you say, particularly lovely man. Very gentle man and a gentleman in the old sense of the word. But yes, in terms of his more recent work and his more recent books, I mean, I have to say he has gone a bit more controversial. Now, I did say this to him on the night we met, actually, the last time we saw each other. I did say that, it did seem he was becoming more out there, more out on a limb with his views or the cases he was looking at. And it's funny, his reaction. He had this kind of wry smile about him, and he basically said, I can't remember his exact words, but he was making the point that, this is a controversial subject, and it seems to me that I think the longer you're in it, the longer you're involved in it, it's a risk, I think, for some people, and maybe a danger. Like I say, I've got a huge amount of time for Tim. I'm not quite so sure where he's going with some of the material in his latest books. I mean, for me, Above Top Secret, we all know a massive bestseller in it, a hugely important piece of work for the topic of UFOs and for a lot of people around the world. I think Tim probably introduced a lot of people to the subject back in the late 80s. But yeah, where he's going in the last couple of years, I'm just interested to see where it goes, really.
Yeah, right. That book that you just mentioned, Above Top Secret, that I've always heard a lot of good about. I don't have the book myself, but I've heard it's a very good book. And so getting back, we have you for the whole next hour too. But I wanted to just talk about what was the genesis of this documentary that you recently put together and the name of it.
Yeah, the film's called Cosmic Whistleblowers, and it all began when Jesse Marcel Jr. came to the UK. Crikey, it was around 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe 2007, 2008. It could be. No, it'd be later than that, actually, maybe 2009. I'm not sure of the year, but that's where I first met with Don Schmidt, who was also on the trip, and I think he was promoting his last book at the time, which would have been Witness to Roswell. And we began a conversation there, and that's where the idea began. Don told me, I think even back then, that he was still getting new witnesses to the case, and he was getting new witnesses all of the time. So it all began there, really. We re-established contact maybe a year or two later, and that's where discussions began about maybe looking at doing something and getting some interviews on camera.
Mm-hmm. And so you did a lot of traveling. First of all, is the movie in the can? Is it done?
Yes, I am pleased to say more than 2 years later, Cosmic Whistleblowers got wrapped in the summer of this year. We finished shooting in Mexico City and in Washington, D.C. And we successfully were chosen for the Raindance Film Festival this year in London. And the film actually had its world premiere in the West End in London in the View Piccadilly Cinema, and a 200-seater cinema in September. And audience seemed to genuinely love the film, which obviously is every filmmaker's dream, really. That's all you can hope for, that it's well received, because it was a huge task to make this happen. I've got to be honest with you, Martin.
I'm sure a lot of people have no idea what's involved in something like this. I know everything starts with an idea. That's what they say first. And from there, there's the storyboarding. There's, more or less a screenplay, even though it's a documentary. So a lot of times something like this is not really a moneymaker. You know, people say a lot of times, you know, the UFO documentaries do not make any money, or most documentaries do not make any money. But yet, you have to have a passion for it. Is that basically what got you going and kept you going?
Absolutely correct, and I couldn't have put it better myself. Really, it has to be something that, in fact, I could put it this way. A friend of mine recently, you know, asked me the same kind of question. You know, why did you make the film? And the answer came to me. It wasn't really a film that I wanted to make, but it was more a film I had to make. At the time, Don said he had New Witnesses, which was the hook to the entire idea. I think it was maybe Nick Pope and a couple of other people. I was reading even a couple of years ago that they were putting this idea over that the Roswell case was dead, and why were people bothering with it? For me, I had the other idea that maybe, you know, if there were some witnesses that were still alive, which of course there are, but very few of them, then it seemed to me that we should probably speak to them at least one more time, put them on the record, and go from there.
And did you actually speak with some of these witnesses?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, we met with some of them in Roswell itself. A couple of them have been on camera before. People you'll know, names you'll know, like Frankie Rowe, for example. And Arthur Ossipchuk, actually, now lives out in Mobile, Alabama. He was part of the 509th Wing Command Group and actually on the plane that flew the wreckage out of Roswell in 1947. So I actually met with him as well. But we also had a couple of new second-hand witnesses, shall we call them. So people who were giving testimony from first-hand witnesses, but accounts which we'd not heard before, and angles that we'd not heard before as well. So we did have some new witnesses. They weren't direct witnesses, I wouldn't say that, but certainly direct connections to the case, family members, sons, son-in-laws, etc., that were given, you know, testimony from the people who were there on the actual day. So, you know, we had a real nice mix of first-hand witnesses and some new names that were connected to the case. But that, I mean, I've got to say, I'm sure we'll cover it as time goes on, Martin, if you've got more questions, but that was kind of just the beginning of the film, really. What began as a fairly modest notion of just getting some of these interviews on camera, because things in documentary, the thing with documentary, Martin, is, as I'm sure you may know, that things don't always go to plan. It's not like shooting a feature. You don't quite know what's going to happen. And on the first day that we landed in Albuquerque, my first interview actually pulled out at the very last minute. Oh. Gave us a massive problem. I wasn't quite sure what to do, so we started rolling the cameras without having an interview to do, and it kind of set a precedent for how the film would take shape, and and that's where it all started.
Huh. So by accident, you started a precedent.
Yeah, because we didn't know what was around the corner. The next day when we landed in Roswell, we had more people kind of potentially pulling out. There were some difficulties with some of the witnesses that Don had set up or tried to set up for us. So things, you know, didn't always go as we hoped they would, and it started happening pretty early on in the process. So yeah, but you know, that's documentary filmmaking. That's the business. You know, it's our job, or my job, just to film things as they unfold, and you know, you can't always predict what's going to happen.
Right. Now, okay, so the living witnesses, they're all like in their 90s or pretty close to their 90s at this point. Did you actually interview anyone that was a direct witness, or were they all the second-hand witness?
No, I would say direct. I mean, it depends on how you grade these people, I suppose, if grade's the right word. Frankie Rowe, we've all heard of course. Her dad was Dan Dwyer, the first fireman on scene at the crash site, if this is to be believed. I know there's some controversy and some question marks still over certain aspects of this story. And I'd like to just say, Martin, for the listeners out there and anyone, that I've never put myself forward as a UFO expert. I just wanted to make that distinction. I'm someone with an interest, a passion, obsession, whatever you want to call it, with the notion that this project was worth doing, but I've never put myself forward as a Roswell expert, so just bear with me if I'm not entirely up to speed on some of the facts. But in terms of my film and my witnesses, Frankie Rowe, daughter of Dan Dwyer, first fireman on scene, according to, well, certainly Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, and she held some of the fragments of the UFO in her own hands. That's her story. She was in the fire station on the day or around the day that it happened because she got an abscess on her tooth. She'd been to the dentist and she was waiting for her dad in the fire station. And the way she describes the story, and I'm sure people have heard this before, but the fireman, her dad, and a couple of the crew came back, had some of this material. You know, she basically describes what we now would think of as memory metal. And so, yeah, I guess she's kind of a first-hand witness, I suppose. And the story that her dad puts to her was that not only there were pieces on the ground, but, I mean, she does go into the aspect of seeing bodies, which, you know, I've got to say that's where I start to get more challenged with what happened, but that's her story.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that in the second hour. We're going to take a break here because there's something that's always puzzled me about Roswell, and I'd like to discuss it with you. So hang in there, everyone. We're going to have a quick music break. And Simon, why don't you say goodbye to the people that only listened to the first hour?
Okay, well, it's nice to have been with you, and hopefully I've had something of interest to share with you guys. Thanks for sticking around.
So that's it for the first hour. Thank you all for listening. If you'd like to listen to our whole shows every week and get automatic downloads in your media player, all you have to do is support us for $1 or more per month. That information is right on podcastufo.com. Next week, we have two guests, actually three guests in total coming up. Mark Rodegear and Leslie Kane first. And after that, we have skeptic Michael Shermer. And should be an interesting show. So I want to thank people for helping out. Keith Rowland for helping out with the Dark Matter Digital Network live show. And we have Peggy Shunning for managing the Facebook page. Remember to like us on Facebook for all the latest UFO news. We have about 24,000 people on there right now. And I want to thank you for listening to the show, even if you can't support us. Do appreciate every single one of you. And we'll be back next week. Remember, you can always listen live for free to the full show at the Dark Matter Digital Radio Network on Wednesday evenings, 8 to 10 p.m. All right, talk to you next week. Keep your eyes to the sky.